Every day, it seems like the left's position on American policing just gets more and more absurd. Every day, I feel like we're covering stories where the police are more and more obviously innocent, and yet the left's reaction to the police doing something that was justified by the circumstances is getting worse, not better. And a perfect example of this is this video I found right here on the internet.com/YouTube of the Young Turks going over Andrew Brown Jr.'s killing at the hands of police after he drove his car at the police.
A North Carolina district attorney has decided that the cops who shot and killed Andrew Brown Jr. in his own car will not face prosecution. They will not be charged.
So we're gonna have to start off this video with me doing the thing that I typically do when I notice Anna Kasparian doing the thing that she's doing. And if that sounds confusing, just wait until I highlight it.
In his own car, in his own car.
Right here, that's what it is. Anna Kasparian once again highlighting a completely irrelevant detail that in no way, shape, or form changes whether or not this shooting was justified or unjustified, as if it's super relevant. Andrew Brown Jr. was in his own car. I mean, what's relevant is the footage that they're about to show of Andrew Brown Jr. driving his own car at the police and thus giving the justification to meet that threat of deadly force or serious bodily injury with deadly force. But Anna Kasparian really wants you to know that he was shot in his own car. He owned that car. That was his car. It was his own car. Kyle Rittenhouse crossed state lines. What happened to George Floyd happened in broad daylight. Anna Kasparian, once again, her opening salvo being completely worthless.
Now, Andrew Brown Jr. was shot twice, even though authorities opened fire, shooting at him 14 times total. 2 of the bullets hit him, 1 in the shoulder, the other in the back of the head.
So he was hit twice and shot at 14 times. I don't know why Anna Kasparian says that, like it's weird for somebody to be hit with less shots than were actually fired in their direction, but okay. Let's hear what the district attorney has to say, Anna.
Here's what the DA said in his statement. Mr. Brown's death, while tragic, was justified because Mr. Brown's actions caused 3 deputies to reasonably believe it was necessary to use deadly force to protect themselves and others.
So the district attorney says it's justified and he will not be filing charges in this case because 3 officers who were about to be hit by Brown's car had a reasonable expectation that they would be harmed by Brown's car barreling towards them.
Now, the cops were attempting to serve 2 warrants, one of which was a search warrant regarding narcotics trafficking. They refused to release any footage of what occurred. Now, we initially covered this story by sharing some details, but the footage had not been released. The family had seen a small portion of the footage, and then now we in the public can see the footage for ourselves.
Now I have to pause Anna right here because she's being a little bit deceptive. North Carolina state law has certain standards on whether or not they release body cam footage. And in fact, in response to this instance, there's actually a bill being proposed in the North Carolina State House that actually wants the footage in these cases to come out within a 48-hour period in order to prevent situations like this where people are using the fact that their law requires them to go through the investigation before releasing it to push crazy conspiracies about how the police are totally covering this up, even though they are complying with the rules that were instituted when the body cams were put into place, because lefty civil liberties associations were very worried about body cam footage becoming public and violating people's privacy rights. So what Anna Kasparian is saying right here is complete nonsense. It's a total fabrication. They were following the rules, and in fact, they went out of their way to show the family of the person who ended up dying in this instance the footage so that they would stop panicking in the media and ginning up hysteria in order to promote this narrative of police racism. Of course, that didn't work, and the footage is out anyway.
However, I do want to note before we go to the video that we don't see it in context. We don't know what happened before, and there's still a lack of transparency in regard to all of the body cam footage and surveillance that they have. With that said, what we're about to show you is the graphic video. It's important to see what actually occurred during the moment of the shooting, so you can determine for yourselves if you believe that Andrew Brown actually served as any type of imminent threat to the cops, which led to them opening fire. Watch.
Now, there is more footage to be released, and I am interested in seeing that footage. However, the idea that we didn't see what happened before this instance is a little bit ridiculous, because the footage, which will be shown to you guys, actually starts with them on the truck before they get off the truck and initiate contact with Brown Jr. So the idea that they didn't see what happened before, or that there's somehow a chapter that's missing where the cops actually lured Brown into a situation where he would drive the car in the direction of the cops, is a little bit ridiculous and fictitious by Anna Kasparian, as per usual. But let's go into the footage, which I will be showing you because I do believe it is compliant with YouTube's terms of service. If not, then I'm going to have to link it in the description, and I will heavily alter it. But let's see which one it is, because I'm not done editing yet, and nobody knows. So that's the important part of the footage. Officers who were clearly identifiable, they had police vests on, approach Brown Jr. in his vehicle. They tell him to stop the car. He then backs up, drives in the direction of one of the officers, shots start being fired, and then he crashes into a tree later, and then he ultimately ended up dying. Now, to be 100% clear, what I am about to say to you is in fact speculation. I think it's pretty accurate speculation, but I do not have confirmation of this based on the low quality footage that we have released to us. But I believe that very early on, the shots started being fired at Brown when he was going at this officer right here. You can hear a popping noise in the video, although I cannot confirm for a fact that that is the gunshot, and I believe that after that, that led to what is known as contagious fire, where people start hearing gunshots and they start firing at Brown Jr. We have no confirmation on whether or not which of the shots or when the shots were fired killed Brown, but it looks to me, and it would stand to reason, that those earlier shots that were fired while this officer was in danger would be most likely the shots to be on target that would eventually end up hitting and killing Brown Jr. Now, I say this in almost every single video that I cover where somebody dies at the hands of the police, that it is unfortunate that this person died. And you can make the case that in hindsight, maybe he wasn't trying to hit an officer and he was just trying to run away, or maybe he was trying to hit an officer and then when he missed, he just took the opportunity to run away. But regardless, in the moment when somebody backs up and then goes forward into you, you cannot assume that they're not trying to hit you with their car. Also, depending on the state, the local municipality, they have different rules, as we've talked about on this show before, about whether or not you can shoot somebody in a moving vehicle, because some departments believe that the chase is inherently more dangerous than stopping it then and there, and other departments believe that shooting somebody behind the wheel of a vehicle creates more danger. So that's all subjective and it's all down to the department. But regardless, he was fired upon when he was driving at the officers who were clearly marked as police officers, and they were clearly telling him not to do so. He did it anyway, and unfortunately, his actions as an independent agent led to his death.
In coming to his decision, Womble relied on an investigative report into the shooting conducted by the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation. The report is not considered a public record and will not be publicly released.
Yeah,
so there's
in other words, they're totally guilty. And if they thought the report vindicated them, do you think they might release it? Do you think the police might release the report that clearly vindicates them? They would have had that in the headlines from day one. No, they're hiding the report because they're wrong.
So this is one of those instances where being a big, dumb, slow-moving, idiotic government bureaucracy really works against you, and it's being used against them by the people who advocate for big, dumb, slow, idiotic government bureaucracies. So the rules and regulations around these internal investigations are always sketchy because they're negotiated between police departments, unions, and the city, state, local municipality, whatever. The reason that these investigations aren't public is because typically they've involved information that would not be able to be presented in a court of law, etc., and they go down a lot of different paths that don't technically lead anywhere. However, that does not mean that this internal report is something that condemns the officers. In fact, it would be really advantageous for them to release it now, because I am certain it exonerates the officers because I saw the video, which the video is exonerating to the officers. However, that's not the case because of the rules and regulations, the very same rules and regulations that prevented the release from the body cam footage until after the regressive left already pushed out a narrative about this case. So the report will come out eventually because there will be a lawsuit from the family, and I believe a judge will demand the release of the report, and I guarantee you Cenk will eat his words. If he had any dignity or honor, he'll just never cover it again, never reference it, or highlight a little instance of speculation or a point on the behalf of the investigator and pretend like that's representative of the whole report. And again, that's not speculation on my part. That's exactly what Cenk did when the Michael Brown report came out, and it 100% cleared Officer Darren Wilson. He ignored it, and then he reframed a piece of it to suggest that Brown was running away, and then he said he didn't know the difference between his arm and his elbow, or his forearm and his upper arm, and just went along with it. And we did a video on that on this channel, and yes, I called this my elbow, so eat it. I made a mistake. Too bad.
We have eyes. I don't know if they know that we have eyes. In the old days, there was no body cams, there was no video, and every time they would come out and say the cops were right to kill, 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 and everybody in the media would say our beloved, beloved cops. Of course they were right. These monsters, these black people that endanger the lives of these poor, poor police officers.
Now I know we're desensitized to the needless racialization of everything, but it is important to point out that what Cenk is doing right here is completely dishonorable and disgusting. The idea that he's putting those words, which by the way exist somewhere in Cenk Uyghur's head, in the police officers' mouths who were reacting to a situation in the moment where the guy was driving the car in the direction of the police officers, is absolutely disgusting of Cenk, and he should be shamed for this terrible behavior. Yet this is allowed to operate on YouTube, perfectly monetized, their top creator, since they're going to get rid of Steven Crowder in the political space. Totally fine, not a big deal, even though they're actively lying to you about the video and adding in racialized motives against the cops because they're anti-cop and pro-criminal.
So the family in the beginning had gotten a chance to look at the video recently, and they said it was an execution. Now, I never said that because I hadn't seen the video. And sometimes somebody will have a gun, etc. And you don't know the context. Well, I just saw the video. They drove up, first of all, they drove up like he was Osama bin Laden with SEAL Team 6.
Yeah.
I don't know what his alleged crimes are, right?
Yeah.
I love how Cenk's like, they drove up on him like he's Osama bin Laden. Now, I don't know what his alleged crimes are. Cenk, you're reporting the story. You should know whether or not the police had a reasonable expectation of violence from this individual, thus possibly justifying that show of force at the point that they wanted to arrest him. The idea that you're like, I don't know what his charges are, but I'm going to report this as an execution, and I'm going to take note of the fact that the police showed up in force, even though I'm not even going to bother to search for an explanation as to why the police showed up in that level of force. You have to be kidding me. This guy says he's the #1 online news show in the country, or if not the world, and this is what he's bringing to the table. I don't know what his alleged crimes are, but gosh darn it, the police sure showed up in force. I can't even figure out why those two things might be connected. Great job, Cenk. Total failure in every regard.
Yeah, so let me give some detail into that because I do think it's important.
Yeah, and then I'm going to come back to what you saw in the video, what we all saw.
Yeah, so there's more video showing the cops arrive. They're in the back of what appears to be like a pickup truck. They're in the back, like in the back of the pickup truck, in tactical gear, weapons drawn, ready to go.
So I just want to point out what you're not hearing right now, what Anna Kasparian is not telling you, despite the fact that Anna said, Janky boo, don't worry about it. I'm gonna tell you, because you didn't know what reason they were even there and why they even expected violence, because you're just the head of the #1 internet news program in the country or in the world, whatever, who cares? But I'm gonna break it down for you. And then Anna starts telling us that the cops were sitting in the back of the pickup truck, which we would have seen before the video, even though we saw that in the video that they showed. Like, I didn't dig up other video to show you. I just showed you what was on their network. I don't know what Anna Kasparian's obsession with what cars people were in at different points in this story, as if it had anything to do with anything. But yes, the cops were actually in the back of pickup trucks. Whether or not that makes that a murder or not, I don't know. I haven't seen North Carolina's homicide laws in connection with whether or not being in the back of a pickup truck triggers a murder one, but Anna Kasparian is on the case, and she's going to tell you what you definitely don't need to know.
They claim that he served as an imminent threat, right? Which is why the prosecutors decided that he's not going to charge the cops. There were several cops on the scene, 7 of them. 3 of them decided to open fire. So what happened to the other 4? Were the other 4 not afraid for their lives? Right? Like if he was an imminent threat, wouldn't all of them open fire? There were 14 bullets total. As I mentioned, 2 of them hit Andrew Brown Jr.
So Anna, who cut off Cenk specifically to answer his question about Andrew Brown Jr.'s criminal history and whether or not the police were justified in treating him as an imminent threat, just reiterated information she told you at the beginning of the video, and then came to us with possibly the dumbest point you could make about this case, which is he definitely wasn't really an imminent threat because only 3 of the 7 officers fired at him. What about those other 4? Well, maybe those other 4 were, behind the other officers and they were in the line of fire. Maybe they weren't as close to the situation. They didn't have a clear shot. Maybe they weren't the ones that were actually being driven at. Maybe they just decided not to shoot because why create more chaos and increase the potential for contagious fire? It's not unusual for 3 officers in the front to be shooting at a moving vehicle and other officers to be checking the area or not trying to shoot their fellow officers that might be in the line of fire. So Anna's great exonerating point on how you definitely know it's murder if the majority of officers there don't fire at the person, completely pointless and irrelevant, and the idea that it's totally obvious that he wasn't aiming at the officers, as you can see in the video, him driving at the officers, also nonsensical.
And also, he's driving a vehicle. It's pretty clear that he's trying to get away. It's pretty clear that he's trying to drive away. And I'm not in any way excusing that. But to say that that constitutes an imminent threat to the officers' lives, I think is a stretch. And more importantly, if the officers are worried about the loss of life, maybe don't shoot at an individual operating a vehicle as he's driving away because he might crash into a house. He might crash into a pedestrian. He might, after you shoot him and kill him as he's operating the vehicle, run into an innocent bystander and kill them.
So I've already addressed this point earlier in the video. This is all down to the local department or the state level, whether or not they decided that it's more dangerous to allow somebody to get behind the wheel of a car and then start a chase where they could ultimately end up killing somebody, or they believe it to be more dangerous to shoot somebody behind the wheel and thus allowing them to hit another car or a person and kill somebody. So I'm not going to go over that again. What I will point out is that Anna Kasparian thinks a pedestrian and a bystander are 2 different things, and I just want to play that clip for you again.
Maybe don't shoot at an individual operating a vehicle as he's driving away because he might crash into a house. He might crash into a pedestrian. He might, after you shoot him and kill him as he's operating the vehicle, run into an innocent bystander and kill them. Yeah. That's something to consider. I'm just saying, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm crazy.
I don't even know why we do police training in this country. I don't even know why we have threat assessments and all these statistical models about whether or not it's more dangerous to shoot somebody behind the wheel of a moving vehicle or to allow them to engage in a police chase. Anna Kasparian has all the answers. Anna Kasparian should open up her own police academy because Anna Kasparian knows what's going on. And if you don't believe her, you're crazy, because she's definitely not crazy, but you're crazy. You're crazy.
No, I don't need any more context. I don't care. Look, we militarized the police. I guess they thought he was El Chapo or Bin Laden or whoever they thought he was. No, they don't, of course, think any of that. They just wanted to be cowboys. Oh yeah, I got these big giant weapons and I want to use it. Oh my God, this guy's so dangerous and I heard he's black. Let's go get the guy, right?
There we have it again. Cenk Uygur just throwing race out there, just putting it out in the ether, hopefully to stir up racial hatred and hysteria, even though this person was clearly shot because he was driving a car at the officers that shot at him, and nothing about this has any connection to race at all whatsoever. Absolutely disgusting, and we have to keep calling it out, and we have to point it out every time because we can't allow this to continue. This has negative consequences for our society and how we view our police departments.
And so then they drive, but guys, we saw it. You can rewind and watch it. I don't need any more context. He drove away and they shot him from the back.
I like how Cenk's drove away motion even has him going in different directions, and looks like he's potentially just missing something, aka the police officers in this instance. Also, he's screaming for no reason that he doesn't need any more context, because honestly, the reason they were covering this story in the first place is because it was a black person killed by the police, and they thought they could make the unarmed argument, even though, like in many cases, when a quote-unquote unarmed black person is shot by the police, they're just like this, where they're driving a car at the police. They're unarmed because the car doesn't count as a weapon, even though it's prosecutable as assault with a deadly weapon, which is what this guy was doing.
You can say, oh, well, but Cenk, let's be fair. We were going to be embarrassed if he got away. We brought it in what we thought was SEAL Team 6, and we were all going to have a beer after we killed him. And now it looked like he was going to get away, and that would have been embarrassing. So we just decided to execute him on the spot.
You know what's great about that is that Cenk is so used to lying and adding motivations to the police officers that what he said didn't make any sense. So he was implying that they killed him at the end because he ran away, but if you listen to him in the beginning, he's saying that they showed up with the intention of killing him. Cenk trying to smear the cops in any way humanly possible, even though he has no evidence and no basis that if not for Andrew Brown Jr.'s actions, the cops would have responded in this way.
The prosecutor, the DA saying, yes, if you running away from the cops, bad. Is it a death penalty?
In this
Apparently
country
it
it
is.
is.
No,
Yeah.
but literally,
Yep.
the prosecutor in North Carolina is telling you, if you disrespect the cops, you don't follow their orders, you run away, whatever it is, they're allowed to murder you.
One more
They're
quote.
allowed to execute you on the spot. You just saw it.
No, the district attorney did not say that. When Cenk says he literally said you can execute or murder them for disrespecting the cops, what Cenk actually means by that is that he is literally lying to his audience and trying to gin up anti-cop hatred. Again, this is a guy who has inspired real-life people through the lies in his video to reach out and commit violence against police officers, sometimes killing them, and he's actually delivering worse, more hateful, more false rhetoric about these situations. It's absolutely crazy that this guy's a pillar of YouTube, somebody that they promote, while other people who call him out get banned, get restricted, get demonetized.
If you employ a car in a manner that puts officers' lives in danger.
Oh, shut up, you coward.
That
you
is a
goddamn coward. Okay, you thought that was your life was in danger because he might have run over your toe? We just saw the video. Before, when you liars lied nonstop about black people in America, everybody in media who were idiots and also with terrible intent said, yes, of course, all the cops are always right and the black people are always wrong. Minorities are always wrong. Latinos are wrong, blacks are wrong. They're all guilty. The cops are beloved angels who never lie. But we just saw the video.
No, but there's
the
more.
biggest danger was maybe your toe would have been grazed. And you murdered him for that, and the prosecutor says, go get him, champ. Kill him again. Kill him again. That's what this country's about. That's what happened in North Carolina. That's the reality. They say, oh, black people are too angry. I honestly don't think they're angry enough. How many of them are going to get murdered?
Cenk, you may be fooling the young, impressionable buffoons that follow your channel and actually think that it's news, but nobody's impressed by your emotional meltdown over this situation. You can scream at the camera, you can attribute motive and quotes to the police and to the district attorney, you can yell and call out crazy things and pretend like your political opponent said that, but we're not gonna buy it. We're gonna call you out on this every single time. We're going to point out what you're doing in public until you stop doing it, or until the very few people who buy into the propaganda that goes on your network all the time get it through their heads that you are lying to them for money.
Cenk, the second part of that statement though, and I feel like you're gonna blow a gasket, but you should, everyone should, because the second part of the statement from this district attorney is very relevant. And I don't care what direction you're going, forward, backwards, sideways. I don't care if you're stationary, and neither do our courts and our case law.
Oh, you monster.
That's right.
That's the guy who's supposed to, Andrew Womble, he's not gonna prosecute a cop, ever. He just told you, I don't care if you're sitting in your car. That's what stationary means. I don't care if you're sitting in your car. If a cop comes and you even look at him sideways, he's allowed to execute you. Death sentence. Death sentence for not listening to a cop. I've said this on the show for 20 straight years. Everybody watching knows. The biggest crime in America is not found in any actual law, disrespecting a police officer. There is no law that says you're not allowed to disrespect a police officer, but that is the quickest way to a death sentence in this country.
It's just more hysteria on top of more hysteria every time I revisit the Young Turks and they're talking about one of these videos. Once again, for those of you who are not good at paying attention, by the way, the video will be linked in the description if you want to look it over for yourself and examine whether or not my speculation is correct about when the first shots were fired. You drive at the police when they are armed, when they're clearly labeled, and they tell you not to do that. You are putting yourself in a dangerous situation. That's what Andrew Brown Jr. did. It was not an execution for not following orders. It was not an execution or murder for not listening to the cops. What Cenk is doing is obvious, and it should be obvious to everybody. Unfortunately, it's not. It's promoted. It's the popular narrative, which is why we're here responding to it. But hey, those are just my thoughts. They happen to be 100% right and accurate. But if you're wrong, I would be happy to read and laugh at your wrong opinion down in the comments below. If you liked the video, you can show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. You can follow me on my social medias. They're all over the description of this video. You can support me via the support links. Also in the description. This has been me once again going to town on a Young Turks video. Till next time.